Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Where today I'll be breaking down all the Easter eggs and things that you may have missed in the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery titled Stormy Weather. While this chapter was very much a bottle episode, it did make a lot of references to things that have happened in the past few years on Discovery, as well as make use of some plot devices from prior series in the franchise. One of the critiques of Discovery is that it can feel at times disconnected from the rest of the Trek universe, with many believing that the series existed in an alternate universe like the J.J. Abrams Kelvin universe during the show's first couple seasons. Even though now the Discovery is the furthest in the future of any shows, it feels like this season the show's writers are doing a lot to keep it tied to the other series by incorporating show titles, settings, and other aspects of the production that have a history within the franchise. I will go over all these connections and more, but first I want to thank you for clicking on this video and remind you to please hit that like button if you enjoy the content and subscribe to get notified of future videos. I really appreciate it, and it does a lot to help my channel grow. The title of the episode is a reference to the song Stormy Weather used within, which was first sung in 1933 by Ethel Waters. Although the version released by Lena Horne in 1941 is probably the most popular rendition, as it was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the year 2000. In this episode, the song Stormy Weather is sung by Annabelle Wallis, who voices Zora during a period of crisis. This is not the first time that Star Trek has had a cast member sing a classic song, as in the movie Star Trek Nemesis, Data, played by Brent Spiner, sung the Bing Crosby classic Blue Skies at the wedding of Will Riker and Deanna Troi. Years later, in the series Picard, during the death of the character Data, the song Blue Skies can once again be heard, this time sung by Issa Briones, who plays Soji on that show. Coincidentally, all these songs are sung by actors playing characters created from artificial intelligence. One of the biggest developments on the series starts to play a much bigger role as the evolution of the Discovery's computer comes front and center after being hinted at for the past few years. From the short trek Calypso that was released all the way back in 2018, we know that eventually Zora will be the only being left on Discovery. If you are not familiar with that story, it showed the Discovery centuries in the future, even from where it is now, alone and adrift in space with the computer, which identified itself then as Zora, controlling and holding the ship in place for unknown reasons. At the time of the release of this short trek, the producers of Discovery had not made the decision to jump the ship and crew to the 32nd century at the end of the second season, with the largest continuity error now being the refit of the ship done before this season, even though the ship was shown in its original configuration during the short trek, which supposedly occurs afterwards. But even still, the current writers on Discovery have committed to line up with the events shown in Calypso, and this season seems to be taking strides to do so. The episode begins with Burnham creating a family tree for herself, similar to the one she was given last episode. There are many pictures on this tree from characters that have appeared on Discovery, such as Michael's human parents, her Vulcan parents Sarek and Amanda Grayson, both versions of Philippa Georgiou, 2 pictures of Spock, and one of Saru. Book recalls that today is his father's birthday, but they were not very close. He is obviously getting tired of waiting for answers about the death of his planet and wants to do something. Burnham and the crew are set to travel to where the dark matter anomaly has left a subspace tear. Subspace has never really been explained, but Geordi LaForge once referred to it as a part of the universe separate from our own that is like a huge honeycomb with an infinite number of cells. Essentially, the crew of the Discovery have found that the DMA created a tear in subspace that will allow them to enter and learn more about it. Subspace has been referenced multiple times throughout Trek's history, but the 2 events I believe this episode takes most of its story from are the Next Generation episode Force of Nature and the Voyager episode named The Void. In fact, Saru mentions that both the Enterprise and the Voyager have encountered this phenomenon. The episode Force of Nature had to do with the idea that warp drive was damaging the fabric of subspace, and that eventually it would lead to the inability to travel using warp technology, and also introduced the idea of a subspace rift. The Voyager episode The Void depicted the crew of that ship being trapped within subspace and unable to leave, similar to what occurs to the Discovery. As Burnham and Saru travel to the turbo lift, she asks Zora to gather the crew and even says please, which does not go unnoticed by Saru. The treatment of artificial intelligence is a topic that is touched on also many times throughout Star Trek, most notably with the strides made by the aforementioned Data and the Doctor emergency medical hologram on Voyager. But parts of this episode really reminded me of the Next Generation episode Quality of Life, that dealt with robots known as exocomps who gain sentience and prove this after one refuses an order that will destroy it. Instead of being just used as a tool, the robots demonstrated that they understood the meaning of life and death, and it appears that Zora is making similar strides this season. After Burnham states that she has completed a diagnostic test on Zora and has found nothing wrong, Zora responds to Saru that all systems are operating within defined parameters, which is almost exactly what Data would say after he completed a diagnostic. Data also gained emotions for a time, but he did not develop them as Zora has. Rather, they were added to his programming like a software update. He could even turn them off and on when he wished, something Captain Picard envied on occasion, as was depicted in the movie Star Trek First Contact. The Discovery enters a subspace rift, which looks like the Eye of Sauron, but does not experience the turbulence they expected. In fact, they experience nothing at all, similar to what the Voyager encountered in the episode The Void. That pocket of subspace was stable and had trapped many ships, but this one is shrinking because it was created by the DMA affecting normal space. The ship sends a Dot 23 bot to explore the space, and it is destroyed when it hits the edge. The robot seems to scream while it is destroyed, and this may be because a part of Zora is still in it. If you recall, at the end of last season, when the Emerald Chain commandeered the Discovery, Zora hid in the Dot 23 robots. It is possible that because of that, this little robot had developed emotions as well. While this is going on, Gray begins a conversation with Zora about what the ship is going through. Gray learns that since Zora cannot read anything from the ship's external sensors, it is as if Zora has been cut off from what is going on outside the ship. I think this is an allegory to what many people now feel during the pandemic, that they have been cut off from the outside world, and since they have had little contact with others, it leads to them internalizing everything. It is a valid point, and one that I'm sure many people like myself can understand. Gray, like Book, is also feeling like they need to be of some use. I like that both characters are being given more to do, as I feel like they are two of the most interesting characters on the show. Captain Burnham decides to leave the Void, but the ship is unable to find a way out because there are no reference points. When there is no other option, Stamets and Book get ready to use a spore drive, with Book being the pilot. The jump does not work, and Book has a vision in which he sees his father. His father acts as a manifestation of his guilt and asks why he is not hunting the ones responsible for their planet being destroyed. He reveals that Cleveland Booker's real name is Turex, after it was teased in the third season that we would eventually learn what his real name is. Gray is trying to calm down Zora by playing a game, and there Zora mentions that her name means the same thing on Earth as it does on Navarre and Baku. Navarre is of course the new name of the planet Vulcan that changed after they took in the surviving Romulans, and Baku is a planet featured in the movie Star Trek Insurrection. While they are playing, Zora discovers that there will be a hull breach. Dr. Pollard is able to save everyone in the section except for one crewman, which Zora shows remorse for afterwards. The ship is starting to buckle under the pressure, like a submarine lost in a deep ocean, and the crew with Zora begin to formulate a plan to leave. Zora creates a visual avatar for herself that I couldn't help but think looked a lot like Kit from the series Knight Rider. Zora is unwilling to proceed as she is unsure and scared, once again calling back to the exocomp robots from the Next Generation. The crew continues to come up with options as Burnham and Gray work with Zora. Zora's fear is a sign of her individuality, and this theory was also explored in the Voyager episode Latent Image. In that episode, the Dr. EMH becomes unable to perform his duties after making a decision that costs the life of another crew member. The verdict is made to delete the memory of this incident from the Doctor's file, but he eventually does figure it out, which causes him to suffer the same issues. Ultimately, with the help of 709 and the captain, he is able to continue on. In sickbay, Dr. Culber and Dr. Stamets work together to learn that there is evidence of the DMA in Book's system after he was zapped trying to make the jump. They learn that there is a connection to the galactic barrier, which is an energy field surrounding the rim of the Milky Way galaxy. This is a concept that originated in the original series and is mentioned in the first episode that aired, Where No Man Has Gone Before, but curiously, no other crew in the franchise has visited there. The implication now being that whoever created the DMA is not from the known galaxy. The crew find a way out of the subspace void using a sonar ping, but because of the danger to the ship, the crew would not survive the trip. It is decided to cut off life support and put the crew in the transport pattern buffer until the ship is clear, with Burnham staying behind as the captain and to help support Zora. When Zora states that there are records of this being attempted before, this is a direct reference to the Next Generation episode Relics, in which the chief engineer of the original USS Enterprise, Montgomery Scott, returns after he's found in the pattern buffer of a shuttlecraft that has been crashed for 75 years. It makes sense that there are so many references to the Next Generation in this episode, as series star Jonathan Frakes also directed this episode of Discovery. Coincidentally, his character is the first to welcome Scotty to the Enterprise D in the TNG episode Relics. Captain Burnham along with Zora take the Discovery through the subspace barrier and the ship is able to pass through. Burnham awakens in sickbay and learns that the ship and crew have survived. Well, that was everything I saw in this episode, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?